Conversations are often thought of as terms of speak and spoken back to, speak and spoken back to. Well, suppose you have a child, say a 2 or 3 year old, likes to play with blocks, perhaps, and you would really like to be able to have a conversation with them. Well, how well is his consciousness developed at that point? Well, it turns out that consciousness is independent of brain development. Consciousness exists fully developed at the time of conception, has nothing whatsoever to do with the physical structure of a brain. Self-awareness, when one has a brain, is a different kind of consciousness. For instance, when I was a babe in swaddling clothes in a crib, I used to kick the foot of the crib out because of a monster that came from behind the radiator at night with all the clanking and with his chains and things, and it was terrified me. So I would kick violently and kick the backboard out. And one morning, my my parents had taken me to sleep with them in the next room, and she brought me back in. Remind now, this is I'm under a year now, maybe only 6 months old, out of the womb, and she's got me swaddled up, and she tilts me towards the crib where the backboard is again kicked out, and she says, Sean, look what you did again last night. Now, this might seem like an ordinary comment, but I had no development of speech. The only thing that I could do is, when I got terrified, is say, Ma, Ma, Ma. That's the only word I knew at that point. Now, how is it that I could hear her language structure, and the meaning when I hadn't yet developed my brain? And there are times when people who have been in the womb, going way back at the early development of the embryo, who have related stories that they saw and heard their mother was involved in. And they checked it out later with their mother, and their mother was shocked that, yeah, that did happen. How did you know that I said that and that happened? See, consciousness is developed at conception fully. It's there, exists. And little by little, a brain develops. Kidneys, liver, toenails. But those are independent of consciousness. Not totally independent. But consciousness exists in and of itself before the development of any of those things. So, getting back to having a conversation with your child before they can speak, they can understand your language. And a lot of parents think you should Google, Well, that is communicating some meaning through music. But you could say, well, how are you doing today, Johnny? You see, you can put it in a melodious context, but you can use English or French. Isn't it curious that it doesn't matter to a child what language you're speaking that early on? In other words, if my mother had said that in French, I'd have remembered the French words, but the meaning would have been the same. This is a very curious thing. So, Suppose you want to have this conversation with your baby. Now, so suppose it's playing with blocks, for example. Well, now you're not going to do this all day, every day, but this will be like learning sessions with your child. You're going to learn, the child's going to learn something. Okay, so you put it down in the midst of a bunch of stuff it likes to play with, for instance. Okay, now you watch its eyes. You watch its eyes to see what it focuses on around itself. And when you see the interest in its eyes focus on something, you're close enough so you reach over while it's looking at that thing, pick it up, and bring it directly into your child's face so it can hold it, so it can examine it closer to see if it's really interested in what it was looking at. Now, so it takes it, whatever it does with it, for a while, let it do that. And of course, it's going to get bored in about 30 seconds, probably, or depending on its age. And it'll start looking for something else. So you're paying attention. So it will light on something else. You pick that up, bring it over to the child. And maybe you'll do this for only 15 or 20 minutes before you let the kid alone and let it, have a little recreation time free from you, and or whatever. And, and so maybe later on in the day you might do it again, or tomorrow or something like that. Well, what you're inculcating that the child is assimilating is that when it has an interest in something, it sees that it's important that it get close to it, that it can have its curiosity satisfied at an early age. And over time, you continue to do this. A child learns to be able to read, write, and that kind of thing. And so you take it as a shopping trip, and you see that its face lights on various things, maybe a set of pencils, maybe a bike, maybe a this, maybe a that. Well, then you inquire, say, do you like this? What do you think about this? In other words, you see again from your child's eyes what they're focusing on if they show interest, and you bring that item to them, not necessarily physically, but in their mind's eye now. What do you think? I noticed, do you like the colored pencils? Which ones do you like? Blah, blah, blah. Explore the child's interest for his own sake, not only yours, so that he learns when he's interested in something, these are the questions he should ask that bring him fulfillment and satisfaction of his curiosity. And he's going to start trusting you. He's going to start associating you with fulfillment of his curiosity that is stimulating his life to grow. This is a fantastic depth to a relationship. And it's so simple to create. A little bit, 15, 20 minutes a day. Some in the morning, some in the afternoon. And as the child gets older, becomes a teenager, you've been doing this all along. You take him to a bookstore and you see the kinds of books, or you see the apps he's got on his cell phone, and you see what he's interested in. And now you ask him, what about it is interesting to you? And it continues this relationship that started when the child was 6 months or so old. And now, if you haven't done the kid wrong, he's beginning to trust you implicitly, because you're a source of a great deal of growth for him. Your love stimulates his ability to love. How you treat him is how he's going to treat himself and others. But now we're focusing on him. So in time, now he's a teenager getting his driver's license. And at this point, if you've been doing all this all along, exploring his interest for himself, not your interest in what it, in other words, he's interested in space and you're interested in space, don't investigate his interest by your interest. Investigate his interest with his interest. In other words, what is it about? What is it about space, Johnny, that you like? Oh, really? Well, what do you know? Um, are you interested in radiation on Mars or whatever it is? You explore his interest and you're showing him how to explore his own interests. Of course, you're learning some very good things about him yourself. Hello, hello, hello. But you're further inculcating the propensity to that he knows that he can satisfy curiosity. He knows when he has curiosity what he's supposed to do with it. That he has developed the ability and the urge and the success in finding out and sating his curiosity. This is very valuable for many things. But now he sees you, he's come of age and he sees that you're doing this for him. So now he's going to trust you. Whereas many children don't trust their parents because their parents haven't really demonstrated that the parents are really interested in their child. The parents are really interested in their child from what they can get from their child in terms of emotional support and, requited love and that kind of things. But this is selfish on the part of the parent. You, as a parent, you get far more by giving to your child than by taking from it. And so if this has been going on all along, when the child gets to the place where he's got to make some decisions that are serious life decisions, you're going to have enough experience with him to be able to help him isolate and augment various things that are important to him, not to you. Not for you thinking it's important for him to become a doctor, but what is important for him to become, and you support him as you've been doing all along. See what he focuses on, bring it to him for inspection. Same thing. And now he will trust you when he's got a question. Instead of hiding his drug habit or even experimenting with heroin or something, he might well come in and say, what do you think about this, Mom or Dad? Because he knows you're not going to screw him over. You've never done it, so, or you said you're sorry when it happens sometime. Yeah, see what you created a good relationship with your child. Well, I'm carrying on because this for a while, because in detail, because this is true of any relationship. You have a sweetheart you're having a relationship with. You watch, this was true in high school, and there's been a lot of studies that the iris, the pupil of the eye expands when it sees something interesting to the brain, right? Well, you watch, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you want to do this, you can look at their eyes as they're talking, and you can see what areas they are more emotionally excited about or more emotionally interested in. And then when you have time to fit in the conversation, you ask about those things that you saw where they had interest, that they went on. Now, this creates a tremendous amount of trust very quickly in the person to whom you're doing it, because you're clearly inside their brain, but you're not like a bull in a china shop. You're resolving things for them, perspective, just by your presence. So this is very valuable because any long-term adult relationship is based on trust, that the other person knows what you like and supports you. And what you know about them, you support them. Ask them about them. Nothing can be faster in creating trust and emotional intimacy or openness in the individual to whom you're paying attention. People crave attention in this day and age in America, most of them, with whom you have a love type relationship. Love has many different types within itself. Successful relationship. First of all, love and its synergy must exist, and then you can't really manufacture that, but you are responsible, both of you, or us, as the case may be, to uphold your end of the seesaw, creating emotional intimacy and trust so that love can be expressed and can grow and be healthy for each in the relationship now, comparatively. Of people who really like to be together. They love each other. They can express their love. They have emotional intimacy that they know how to create. They have trust that they know how to create. That's an experience of how the other person's been treating them. And so those three things are necessary to get your relationship into the top percentile of successful relationships where the people really want to be together. But as the saying goes, when you plunk down your price at the beginning, that determines the outcome. If you choose a person who cannot or will not reciprocate and create emotional intimacy with you and trust, you may experience a crush or love, but it's not going to go anywhere. You're going to end up in one of the three poor groups. So what do you do about it? Well, early on, try him out. Try out. Give him some attention, find out and see how he responds. If he starts talking about himself endlessly when you give him just a little bit of attention, he's a little too needy to reciprocate when it's appropriate. You just run the test. On the other hand, if you make a foray into mentioning something that looks like he's interested in by his eyes or his speech, and he closes you off and won't talk about it, then he's not capable of emotional intimacy there. You just found out he can't hit the ball back or doesn't want to, whatever. It's time to move on. See, it cost you one date. That's the time to find this out. That's the time you need to see it before your love gets any stronger and overwrites your good assessment of the situation. Check out. See if your date is comfortable with in an appropriate manner to respond to your inforays into their psyche, emotions, and their mind. To ask them, when they show an interest in something, ask them a little more about it to see if they let you in. And then see when they get finished if they turn about and they ask you. If they don't turn about and ask you, probably time to take that as a warning. So this thing about relationships, of building trust and emotional intimacy with all age groups, is pretty much the same.